And more on what Emmanuel Macron's victory means for Middle East peace. I'm joined by Naftali Bennett. He is Israel's Minister of Education, also a member of the Israeli Security Cabinet and leader of the Jewish Home Party. Mr. Minister, thank you for being here in person in New York.
Great being here.
Macron's victory. Look, he's for the two-state solution. He did say he would not unilaterally recognize the Palestinians, and he's been critical of the settlements. What's your reaction to his win?
Well, first of all, I congratulate the French people for making a very clear decision, and we certainly respect their decision. Macron has been a friend to Israel, and we certainly view him as such. He visited Israel about a year and a half ago. And I think the prospects in the Middle East are good, one way or another. You know, we're on a very good track over the past few years. It's been tough, you know, with ISIS and Iran, but we've got this strong country called Israel smack in the middle, and we're doing fine.
You mentioned his visit. That was 2015.
That's correct.
He was the minister of economic minister under Hollande's administration, and when he went to Israel, he said something that was fascinating. He talked about an entrepreneurial empowerment of Bethlehem and of the West Bank. And you discussed that today at the Jerusalem Post event where you spoke here in New York. What is that? And that is different than the diplomatic stalemate that we've had all these decades.
Yeah, that's precisely right. You know, I come from the high-tech arena. I spent a decade there. I believe the future of peace is an economic, entrepreneurial-based peace as opposed to political, diplomatic peace. We've been trying that route for so many decades, and it's not worked. What we need to do is focus on building up, bottom up, an economy for the Palestinians, for the Israelis together, industrial zones, high-tech. We can do so much. It's a good nation over there. We can do good stuff together.
Do you think the Palestinians can achieve that, and that is doable with the tensions and some of the hatreds, that maybe you can bypass the political aspect for now to help the people economically?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm confident that at the end of the day, people want good lives, they want good education for their kids, they want to have a good job, and that's things that we can achieve. So I would focus on that, and I think that real deal is what we need to achieve in the Middle East.
We are watching President-elect Macron at the Louvre as he takes that long walk up to the stage. We'll take his remarks in a minute, so we may have to interrupt you, Minister. Will this be something that President Trump will bring up or raise with your Prime Minister and maybe with Mr. Abbas, because we hear he may be going to Ramallah?
I believe so, and I think that's what President Trump ought to focus on economy, on strengthening the Middle East and fighting Iran. Iran and ISIS, those are the two big enemies in the Middle East. We have to deal with them and focus on that.
You know, as we watch Mr. Macron walk the long walk, there's been the Western civilization and the bulwark of international affairs since World War II. Your nation, certainly a part of that after the independence of '48. What are your thoughts as we watch this transition tonight to a centrist, to someone who's more of a globalist and not as an isolationist as Marine Le Pen was?
Well, I think we're seeing global movements and contrasting vectors here. On the one hand, people want to keep their identity, their unique identity. On the other hand, they do want good lives. And what we're seeing all across the world is that tension. I think this is good news for Europe, and you know, we're very optimistic.
And France, of course, has had its attacks by the radical Islamic terrorists. And what is your advice? You served as a commando. You are in the cabinet for security for Israel. As Western nations, what should we do?
A, first, face reality as it is. Don't make up a false reality. And B, fight those terror cells where they emerge from. Don't wait for them to reach the streets. You can get them, nip them in the bud.
Macron, in his earlier speech early this evening when he won, he mentioned the issue of terrorism several times. Of course, Le Pen seemed to be much more stronger on immigration and dealing with that. What is your advice for what we can do? What lessons can America take and the rest of the world from what you are doing in Israel? You've had the stabbings. There was one at the Damascus Gate today, an attempted stabbing. But you've been fairly successful.
Yeah, we have a thriving economy, even though we're threatened, using common sense. Common sense. It's not as if all the Arabs are our enemies, not at all. Not all the Muslims are our enemies, but to differentiate between the bad guys and the good guys. And I would say that would be the guiding principle.
So before we see him speak, your sense of what we can expect from the president's trip, our president, when he goes. He's going to go to Saudi Arabia, a new coalition of the Sunni Arab nations and Israel together fighting ISIS, but also Iran.
Iran, yeah. Iran is the biggest problem, make no mistake. ISIS is a problem, it's the smaller of the two devils. Iran is the big problem. We would expect Trump to re-engage and fight Iran, not necessarily with military force, but with all the capabilities of soft power, hard power, and deal with that, and then we'll have a much more stable Middle East.
Does that mean sanctions? Does that mean maybe scuttling or at least reimagining the nuclear deal?
I think we have to take a very fresh look at the deal and see what elements are good and what are not, and fix it.
And what about the Iranian influence in Syria and, of course, Hezbollah? The Israeli military took out a warehouse at the Damascus airport the other day, right after an aircraft, a cargo aircraft, flew in from Tehran, believed to have had missiles.
Iran's this octopus, and the head of the octopus is Iran, and it sends its arms all across the Middle East and the world. We got to deal with that.
Minister